we are seeing a recent development, a new development. This time around, contrary to opinion and view of Nigerians regarding herders who community clashes, we are seeing a situation where Metiala, Fulanis are complaining of their members being persecuted, being disallowed. This time around, they're accusing the military and they're accusing local government authorities. And this one is coming from the axis of Kaduna, and the accusation is pointing at southern Kaduna. What is that southern Kaduna have been a hotspot for herders host community clashes. And almost all the cases, the southern Kaduna people themselves, of course, the host communities has always been the victim. But this time around, we are seeing a cry from strange quarters, from the Fulani themselves, alleging that their members are being disallowed by local government authority and even the military. And according to them, that the only sin they committed is asking for grazing routes. As according to them, that they demanded to go along and cross a grazing route that has been in existence. But we shall go into the nitty-gritty of grazing route and grazing reserves in Nigeria. Because we understand that issue of grazing route and grazing reserve have been overtaken by events over the years. So a bit of imagination where somebody could be thinking of grazing route in this 21st century rather than thinking of ranching. But we shall get to that. Before then, let me quickly bring you up to speed with how the Punch newspaper put it, because the information came from the Punch newspaper. According to the Punch newspaper, I say Metiala demands military probe over Kaduna killings. Going further into the conversation, I say the Kaduna State chapter of Metiala Breeders Association of Nigeria has accused some military personnel and local government officials of complicity in what he described as targeted killing and persecution of Fulani herders in southern Kaduna. Going further, I say in a strongly worded statement titled "A Betrayal of Justice" and signed by its chairman Alhaji Abdul Hamid Musa Abaka and made available to Arewa Punch, the association condemned what it called a recurrent pattern of violence, injustice, and betrayal against its members in the area. Going further, he said, Marban alleged that on September 28, 2025, 4 herders identified as Suleiman Idris, Yusuf Abdullahi, Hamidu Dauda, and Ibrahim Hassan were ambushed by armed militaries at Tanda village in Jamai local government area while trying to access an old cattle grazing route. An old cattle route allegedly blocked by local groups. According to the group, the attack was premeditated and unprovoked. Their only offense was questioning their long-established cattle route had been unlawfully blocked. I think that's where I'm going specifically, talking about the grazing route. I understand that actually, before now, in the time past, we understand that there used to be grazing routes and grazing reserves. Of course, we understand that have been overtaken by events, by way of encroaching, by way of modern farming and all of that. But as we have it, the best word practice when it comes to cattle rearing is ranching. So the question is, why is somebody not telling the Fulani herders themselves that they should go and ranch their cow? That notwithstanding are not in support of the killing of the herders if they were killed in the manner they reported, because I understand that going by the Nigerian Constitution, no one have the right to take the life of any other person. But the question is, in this 21st century, is it still fashionable for people to be involved in movement of cattle in the society? I think the state governors going forward should go ahead to start enacting anti-open grazing laws to criminalize open grazing. I decided that in the past, I think it was only Ekiti State and of course Benue State that enacted such laws. But the challenge has always been the ability of the state governments to enforce such laws. Hence, the agency of enforcement is the police, of course, from federal government. And under the last administration of Muhammad Buhari, it was even difficult to have the police enforce such laws. But now that the state, the federal government have given nod for forest guard, I understand that if you now have forest guard in place, the purview of enforcing such law will rest with them. So that is my thinking, that to solve the problem of header communities clashes, that we should go ahead, talking about the state governors this time around, to start enacting anti-open grazing laws. And when those such laws are enacted, the forest guard should be in place to enforce them. Because, as far as I'm concerned, that is the best way, the shortest way to stop these incident clashes between herders and host communities. But as far as I'm concerned, life is sacrosanct. And the best way to protect that life is to stop open grazing forthwith. Whether at the level of federal government, at the level of state government, there's every need to criminalize open grazing. Encourage herders to, of course, ranch their cows. But let me quickly say at this point that the idea of the government, whether at the level of the state government, federal government, to start bankrolling ranching is a misplaced priority. It's a misplaced priority because cattle rearing, though agreed, it has value chain, is a business of individuals. Though we understand that the Fulanis are the majority in issue of cattle rearing. That, however, other ethnic groups in Nigeria have businesses that is commonly associated with them. I understand that when people from different parts of the country go into different areas to do their business, if they need credit facility to, of course, set up business, they know where to go to. Talking about the banks, the financial institutions. So I think it's out of place for even the herders themselves, or those who rear cow or who seek to rear cow, to start waiting for federal government, state governments to start bankrolling the ranching. Another major issue here is the Fulanis themselves over the years have made every part of the country see them as enemy. So I want to say that it will be a Herculean task for the southern part of the country, for the herders themselves to seek to get land for ranching, even if they seek to even buy or lease. Because the perception out there is that any land you see to herders, they will definitely want to dominate. I want to take over the place, not just taking over the place, want to expand from there. So that is why it is very important that the herders themselves must, as a matter of urgency and necessity, start building their integrity for host communities to start seeing them as peace-loving people. Because this claim that the Fulanis that are violent, that are militants, that are militias, are foreign Fulanis. The question is, it is only the Fulanis themselves who can even identify and isolate the foreign Fulanis, who are perhaps the violent ones. Other Nigerians, the whole communities doesn't have what it takes to know the visiting Fulani, the foreign Fulani, and the Fulani who are born in Nigeria right from time. So the boss still rests in the court of Mietiala, which is the umbrella body of Fulani in the country. Because, as far as I'm concerned, this issue of herders, farmer clashes is long overdue for solution to be achieved. And I want to say that the solution is not far-fetched. It's just that we are shying away from the solution. The solution is simple. Everybody should go and ranch his or her cow. That is the word best practice. And apart from that, those who come in through porous borders in form of militias, we understand that even in the time of Buhari as the president, when he had an encounter with the Trump his first term as the president of the United States of America, Buhari made it very clear that most of the bandits, the terrorists you see in Nigeria, are those who left Libya and some other African countries, and that the only training they had is how they shoot gun, how to shoot gun, and that is part of the problem we face as a country, as a people. But the question is, it is irrespective of whether we have porous borders or not. It is irrespective of whether the headers are foreigners or whether the militaries are foreigners. We have a government in place at the level of federal government, state governments, and local governments that have a responsibility under the law to protect lives and property. Well, if you look at section 14, section 2B of 1999 Constitution as amended, it's very clear that the welfare of the people and their security shall be the primary purpose of governance. More so, as the president, the governors, and local government chairmen in their respective capacities have sworn to an oath to protect lives and property of Nigerians. So this they must do without excuse. So that is why it behoves on them to rise to the occasion to protect lives and properties of Nigerians. But again, let me quickly say that I'm not satisfied with the response of state governors sequel to this issue of community-based policing initiative of federal government, talking about the forest guard. Because I understand that the federal government has since, of course, asked the state governors and the state governments to start engaging forest guards. And of course, they are expected to recruit between 2,000 and 5,000 personnel per state, depending on their financial capacity to pay. But let me quickly say at this point, hence the governors, before now, have alluded to the fact that they now get more money from federal government, or rather from FAC, at the end of the month, as a result of federal government's policy, talking about subsidy of gasoline and unification of efforts at the official window. Because we are meant to understand that that double policy earns federal government, or rather the 3 tiers of government, 8 trillion annually. Meaning we are looking at 4 trillion from each and every area of the policies. But the question is, hence the state governors have admitted that they now get more money. It's going to show that the money to address the payment of those forest guards is not going to be a challenge. And I want to believe that Nigerians should start holding the governors to account. Because the more money they get as a result of this policy I even just talked about, how does it translate into better life for their citizens? How does it translate into better security for their citizens? Hence, the constitution is clear that the welfare of the people and their security shall be the primary purpose of governance. So it means that money should be deployed to address the issue of insecurity, address the welfare of the citizens. So the question is, if the more money they are getting does not translate into better life, better welfare, better security of the people, or rather for the people, then people should start asking questions. Where is the money going to? What are they using to do? Now that even the federal government wants to introduce personal income tax, where they have made it mandatory that by next year, people will be paying tax on personal basis. I think once we get to that level, Nigerians can now rise to start asking questions. How is the money being utilized? Though the money the government spend is general money, is our common patrimony, because a bulk of it comes from crude, which is natural resources. But Nigerians are not necessarily asking questions because the money is not directly coming from their personal purse. But going by this policy of federal government, after the review of of course, the tax base, if it takes effect, I want to believe that Nigerians will going forward have the effrontery to start asking questions. What is the money being used for? How is it being utilized? Because in a developed country, in the same climate, that is what happens. Because the government run on people's tax. That is why the people can easily say you are spending taxpayers' money. So I think if you get to that level, Nigerians can now rise to start asking questions. How is the money being utilized? Because we are not asking enough questions. Whether at the level of federal government, at the level of course, state government and even local government. Now that we have a law in place, a judgment in place for Supreme Court that compel the system that you must pay local government their allocation directly from the federation account. Because it happened before now, we understand that we have a situation where the state governments, when they go to Abuja to collect their own allocation at the end of the month through the Accountant General of the state, they collect what belongs to the state and what accrues to the local government in their respective states. And oftentimes, the state governments have always mismanaged it. But now that the local government have access to their funding directly, I think people should not go to the respective local government chairmen, local government secretariats to start asking questions. How is the money being utilized? I think this question need to be, just as we saw Erufa Hussaini putting Dave Umahi, the Minister of Works, on the spot. How much is the cost of coastal road, Lagos Calabar coastal road per square meter? And as you have it, Umahi initially was not willing to give a definite answer. But I want to say that that encounter have even now made Dave Umahi to start explaining at every given opportunity, start explaining to Nigerians the money involved in that road construction. But at this point, I must say very big thank you for your time. This is Mr.